The human body is amazing in what we can train it to do, but none of these incredible feats would be possible without our bones and skeletal muscles. So how do muscles and bones work to allow us to move in so many ways? And what makes a muscle contract? You'll find the answers to these and other questions as we explore the skeletal and muscular systems. Not all organisms have skeletons. Single-celled organisms, like the amoeba and paramecium, have no need of a skeleton. But as organisms become more complex and increase in size, they develop the need for a support structure of some kind.
As an organism gets bigger, unless it's suspended in water, it needs to have some sort of a rigid framework. And that allows it then to move that rigid framework to produce movement for the organism and to allow the organism to be organized so that soft tissues can be supported by something more rigid.
Insects and crustaceans have an exoskeleton, a tough, rigid protective layer on the outside of their bodies that provides strength and allows for a degree of movement. Large, complex organisms, like human beings, have endoskeletons, skeletons on the inside of their bodies. Although the tough outer armor of an exoskeleton is missing, our endoskeleton still provides protection to our vital organs and systems. The skull completely encases the soft tissue of our brain. The sternum and the rib cage protect the heart and lungs from damage from the outside environment. And the bones of the pelvis cradle our internal organs. In addition to its protective function, the skeleton also provides a strong supportive framework to which all of the body's tissues are attached. A third function of the bones is movement. Our skeleton also plays a role in vital body functions, such as chewing our food to aid digestion and creating blood cells in the bone marrow. Bones are also reservoirs for essential minerals, such as calcium and phosphate. One final function of our bones, one you probably haven't thought of, is communication. Tiny bones in the middle ear transmit vibrations from the tympanic membrane to the inner ear, where the auditory nerve is stimulated, allowing us to hear. And a special cartilage forms the larynx that allows us to create vibrations that become speech. Along with the bones are the skeletal muscles that provide us with support and allow us to move. These muscles are called voluntary because their movement is under our conscious control. Involuntary muscles control vital body functions without our conscious direction, such as the beating of the heart, breathing, or the digestion of food. Muscles also play a role in balance and stabilization of the body. Finally, our muscles generate heat. If the body's core temperature drops below a normal 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, skeletal muscles undergo uncontrolled spasms or shivers to restore the body's temperature. The human body consists of 206 bones, which scientists classify into 4 groups: long bones, like those found in the arms and legs, short bones found in the wrists and ankles, flat bones such as the scapula and the sternum, and irregular bones such as the vertebrae and hip bones that don't fit neatly into the other 3 categories. The skeleton itself is further divided into the 2 categories of axial and appendicular for ease of study and reference. The skull is the part of the axial skeleton that encases the brain and provides support for the teeth. 2 orbits on the front house the eyes. Below are the nasal bones and nasal cavity. Small air-filled pockets on either side of the nasal cavity hold the sinuses that connect with the respiratory system. The maxilla anchors the upper row of teeth. The jawbone or mandible holds the bottom row of teeth. Attachment points on each side are rounded and connected in such a way that allows the jaw a wide range of motion. It is this mobility that makes it possible for us to chew our food and talk, but preferably not at the same time. The cranial vault is made up of plate-like bones that meet at lines called sutures. The cranial vault, together with the cranial base, provides a secure cavity for the brain. An opening at the base of the skull serves as a point of entry for the spinal cord. The vertebral column surrounds and protects the spinal cord. When we are born, it consists of 33 separate bones or vertebrae, but as we age, some of these vertebrae fuse together. The 4 at the bottom form the coccyx or tailbone. Just above the coccyx are another 5 fused vertebrae that form the sacrum, the point of attachment for the hips. Above the sacrum are the unfused vertebrae. The top 7 cervical vertebrae are the smallest, lightest, and weakest vertebrae. Next are the 12 thoracic vertebrae. In the back, the thoracic vertebrae form the attachment points for the ribs. The 5 lumbar vertebrae increase in size as you move downward. The third component of the axial skeleton is the bony thorax or rib cage, which consists of the sternum or breastbone, the ribs, and the 12 thoracic vertebrae mentioned before. The first 7 ribs on each side are called the true ribs because they connect directly to the sternum through short pieces of cartilage called costal cartilage. The next 3 are called the false ribs because each is connected to the cartilage of the rib above it rather than directly to the sternum. The remaining 2 floating ribs don't connect to the sternum at all. The appendicular skeleton consists of the appendages, or additional parts that are attached to the axial skeleton. The arms and hands are connected through a series of bones called the pectoral girdle.
One of the most interesting things about the pectoral girdle is that all of the bones join together with very loosely fitting joints. This gives our arms and shoulders a very wide range of motion, much more than we find in the lower limbs.
The pectoral girdle consists primarily of the clavicle or collarbone that is attached to the sternum on one end and the scapula or shoulder blade on the other end. The upper arm, also called the brachium, consists of a single long bone called the humerus. The forearm, or antebrachium, consists of the radius and the ulna. The ulna is slightly larger than the radius. The carpus, or wrist, consists of 8 small carpal bones that fit together almost like a jigsaw puzzle. The hand itself consists of 19 bones. The 5 bones of the palm are called metacarpals. If you make a fist, the knuckles are the ends of your metacarpal bones. The 14 remaining bones of the thumb and fingers are called the phalanges. The lower appendicular skeleton is attached to the axial skeleton by the pelvic girdle. The pelvic girdle consists of the ilium, the ischium, the pubis, and the coccyx and sacrum. A ball and socket joint joins the femur to the pelvic girdle. The femur is the longest bone in the body. The other end of the femur joins the tibia, the larger and stronger of the 2 lower leg bones. The other leg bone is the fibula, which is situated parallel to the tibia. The patella, or kneecap, strengthens and protects the knee joint. The distal, or far end of the tibia and fibula, are connected to the tarsal bones of the ankle. The bones of the soles of the feet are called the metatarsals. And like the hands, there are 14 bones in the toes called phalanges. The bones of the feet are positioned to form arches on the soles of the feet. Flat feet, or fallen arches, are the result of ligaments that hold the arches in place becoming stretched out. This often makes walking and standing difficult and uncomfortable. The bones of the skeletal system come together or articulate at joints. Joints are classified into 4 major categories: fibrous, cartilaginous, bony, and synovial. In fibrous joints, such as the sutures of the skull, collagen fibers extend from one bone and integrate into another, binding adjacent bones together and keeping them from moving. Cartilaginous joints join 2 bones together with cartilage, such as the joining of the ribs to the sternum. Bony joints, such as those found in the sacrum and coccyx, occur during the normal aging process, when 2 bones that were previously separate fuse together. In synovial joints, such as the knee, a special fibrous joint capsule provides a sac-like pad surrounding the joint that is filled with fluid. Synovial fluid constantly bathes the joint, reducing friction as the 2 bones move. Synovial joints can be classified by their structure. Pivot joints and ball and socket joints allow for movement in many directions. Hinge joints and gliding joints allow bones to move in only one direction. Saddle joints and condyloid joints, such as those joining the thumbs to the metacarpals, allow bones to move in two directions. As strong and functional as the skeleton is, it wouldn't do any of us much good without muscles to move it. Muscles come in a variety of shapes and perform a multitude of functions.
There are muscles with very broad origins and tight insertions. There are long and thin muscles. There are short and fat muscles. All of these different muscles pull on bones in different ways and give our body a variety of different movements.
Muscles can be divided into 5 groups based on the arrangement of muscle fibers. Fusiform muscles, such as the biceps, are spindle-shaped, tapered on the ends and thicker in the middle. Fusiform muscles tend to be quite strong. Parallel muscles, such as the sartorius in the thigh, tend to be equally wide throughout their length. Convergent muscles, such as the pectoralis major, are shaped like a fan. Pennate muscles are shaped like a feather, where the bundles of muscle fibers insert into a tendon that runs the length of the muscle. Unipennate muscles, like the extensor digitorum longus of the calf, have the muscle fibers all attached from the same side. Bipennate muscles, like the rectus femoris of the thigh, have fibers attached from 2 sides. And multipennate muscles, such as the deltoid muscle of the shoulder, have several feathers, with all the quills adjoining at a single point. Circular or sphincter muscles form rings around various openings of the body, such as the lips and eyelids. Most muscles work together in groups to provide smooth, even movement. The muscle that exerts the majority of force is known as the agonist. Muscles that aid the movement of the agonist are called synergist muscles. For every agonist muscle, there is an antagonist muscle that pulls in the opposite direction because muscles can only pull in one direction. They cannot push. Fixator muscles prevent the bone from moving in an unwanted direction. For example, when the biceps contract, fixator muscles prevent the scapula from moving, ensuring that the energy of the biceps concentrates on moving the radius, not the shoulder blade. Muscles of the face allow tremendous precision and control. Those that control facial expression are much more highly developed in primates than in other animals. Muscles in the mouth and back of the throat are responsible for biting, chewing, and swallowing food. The larynx has muscles that control the vocal cords and are essential for speech. These muscles also prevent food or fluids from entering the trachea. Muscles support the head and control its movement. Flexors draw the head down toward the body, while extensors extend the neck and rotate the head. In addition to holding your body upright, the abdominal muscles work with the back muscles to support the internal organs, and they play a role in the vital functions of breathing, waste removal, and reproduction. In addition to muscles and bones, the skeletal muscular system also includes soft connective tissue. The tendon connects muscles to bones. Ligaments, such as the interosseous membrane, connect bone to bone rather than muscle to bone.
When you consider the anatomy of the forearm, you have 2 bones that are in parallel. On one side is a radius, and on the other side is an ulna. The interosseous membrane connects these 2 bones. This interosseous membrane allows the radius and ulna to move together with each other. When I rotate my wrist, I'm actually crossing my radius over the ulna.
The last category of connective soft tissue is the synovial joint capsule that is found around the knee. Bone is a composite material made of both organic and inorganic substances.
The hardness of bone is due to the union of an organic portion of bone that gives its flexibility and an inorganic portion that provides rigidity and strength. Both of these elements together are essential for the hardness of bone and its ability to function properly. Bones are not completely solid. Remember, they're a living tissue. And so blood vessels and nerves permeate the bone. They are surrounded by layers of bone, giving the bone great strength.
On the outside of the bone is the dual-layered periosteum. The tough outer layer contains collagen and serves as a protective coating. The inner osteogenic layer forms new bone cells. Just inside the periosteum is a layer of compact bone composed largely of calcium phosphate. This dense bone appears as a series of concentric rings of bony material called the osteon, which surround an opening called a Haversian canal. Blood vessels and nerves travel the length of the bone through these canals. A membrane called endosteum lines both the Haversian canals and the perforating canals. The perforating canals are another set of channels that run at right angles to the Haversian canals. The endosteum also lines a large medullary cavity at the center of the bone. Unlike the periosteum, it is not as active in bone growth. The medullary cavity in the center contains the marrow. The ends of the long bones contain a different tissue called spongy bone that also has many spaces for marrow. Bones are composed of 4 kinds of cells: osteogenic, a type of stem cell; osteoblasts, bone-building cells; osteoclasts, bone-destroying cells; and osteocytes, cells involved in communication and transport and maintenance of the bone matrix. Let's see how these cells work together. Throughout our lifetime, our bones continually reform, reshape, and grow. In some cases, they may break. When a bone breaks, blood vessels are damaged and blood leaks into the area, forming a hematoma, or pool of blood, that develops into a clot. Osteocytes, disturbed by the fracture, communicate changes in the bone to the osteoblast, osteoclast, and osteogenic cells. As blood vessels infiltrate the site, a soft fibrous granulation tissue is laid down, and a soft callus of fibrocartilage begins to form. Osteoblasts produce a hard callus that adheres to the dead bone at the injury site. They also form a temporary bridge of spongy bone to hold the ends together. Finally, osteoclasts act to remove any excess bone and callus. Within 4 to 6 months from the date of injury, repair is complete. Let's take a look at the structure of our skeletal muscles and what causes them to contract. Entire muscles are surrounded and held together by a sheath of connective tissue known as epimysium. Within each muscle are fascicles, bundles of muscle fibers that work together. Fascicles are surrounded by a connective tissue sheath known as the paramecium. Within each fascicle are individual muscle fibers surrounded by another connective tissue called the endomysium. Like most cells, muscle fibers contain a nucleus, a plasma membrane called the sarcolemma, and cytoplasm called sarcoplasm. Inside the muscle cell, the sarcoplasm is filled with protein bundles called myofibrils. And the myofibrils are composed of bundles of myofilaments called sarcomeres. Sarcomeres are the muscle units responsible for contraction. Let's see how they work. A sarcomere contains 3 types of myofilaments: thick filaments, thin filaments, and elastic filaments. Thick filaments are made up of hundreds of myosin molecules that are shaped like bundles of little golf clubs with their heads sticking out. Thin filaments are made up of 2 molecules of a protein called fibrous actin or F-actin. Each F-actin molecule is like a string of beads. The beads themselves are called globular actin or G-actin. Each G-actin bead can bind to the head of 1 myosin molecule. Elastic filaments run down the middle of the thick myofilaments and extend out the ends to anchor the thick filaments to Z-discs. Z-discs serve as the point of attachment for the elastic muscle fibers. The region between each Z-disc is the sarcomere. This organization of myofilaments within the myofibril is responsible for the dark and light striations seen in skeletal muscles. Muscles contract when stimulated by somatic motor neurons located in the brainstem and spinal cord. The process of muscle movement is driven by the energy released from adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. The energy is absorbed by the myosin head, putting it in the high energy position where it binds to the actin. The myosin head pivots and bends, pulling the actin chain toward the center of the sarcomere. Since myosin heads pull toward the middle of the sarcomere from each side, the sarcomeres shorten, bringing the Z-discs closer together. This ratcheting interactive process of the myosin heads with the actin myofilaments is what causes muscle fiber to contract.
All muscles, whether they are skeletal, cardiac, or smooth, share some similar qualities in their mechanism of muscle contraction. This means that all muscles contain myosin and actin and use ATP as their source of energy for movement.
As we've seen, the skeletal and muscular systems are complementary to each other. A gymnast flips and tumbles, appearing to defy gravity. A marathon runner can run more than 26 miles without stopping. These are dramatic examples of the power and precision of our skeletal muscular system. No less amazing are the movements that our bones and muscles allow each of us to perform every day.